Well, our final story tonight is a bit far away from California. Two photojournalists visited homes, hospital rooms, and schools documenting the early months of war in Iraq 10 years ago. Their photographs are now on exhibit at the de Young Museum. On the eve of the 10th anniversary of the American-led invasion of Iraq, I sat down with the museum's chief curator, Julian Cox, to hear about the work. Julian Cox, welcome.
Good afternoon, thank you.
So these photographs in this exhibit are taken in some of the darkest months of the war, 2003, 2004. There was a lot of news coverage during that time. What do these photographs show that we didn't see as we were consuming the news coverage of the war?
Well, essentially they show an unembedded perspective, meaning that the two photographers were not protected by the US-led coalition forces while they were on the ground. And so it's a sort of street-level view of the war from an insider's perspective. Specifically, both these photojournalists were concerned in covering the war from the perspective of the Iraqi citizenry.
And there aren't many soldiers or Marines in these pictures. They are Iraqi people, by and large. And there's grief, there's blood, there's violence, there's death, there's nudity. You name it. How did you decide which ones to include? Because the book has more than the exhibit does. How did you decide which ones?
The process of selecting the exhibition was based upon a very lengthy conversation with both photographers over a few years, actually. I first became aware of their work around 2006, and I worked closely with them to edit their entire body of work from the many months that they spent on the ground in Iraq. They went there several times during the 2 years that they were engaged with the story as it was developing and changing. And so there were many hundreds of photographs that we edited from, and the concept was to produce a portfolio of photographs by each artist that would be museum quality, that could be presented for in a fine arts museum context.
There are many memorable photos here. Is there one that sticks in your mind?
There are several, but one in particular shows a picture inside a Husainiya, which is a place for religious learning for young boys to attend, Shiite Muslim boys to attend. And you see boys reenacting the scene of a martyrdom of a young child who died in the first few skirmishes of the war. And so I find it a very profound picture because it gives a sense of the generational impact of these kinds of international conflicts, whereby the consequences of war are significant. It goes on. The implications are present for many years to come.
There are many children in the different photographs, and there's one where two men are on a rug with a weapon of some kind. Then they're assembling it, and there's a young boy kind of looking over perhaps one of the men's son. What does that photo tell you? Sort of that similar, how a major conflict like this just touches every generation?
Exactly right. I mean, I think that one of the things that both these photographers were interested in doing was trying to graphically present through the medium of photography the ways in which a conflict touches different facets of a society, of a community. And we all know that many of the bombings took the lives of individuals of all different ranges of age and background. And many of the activists involved in the militia movement were very young men, some not even teenage years, and so there's an implication through these photographs of an extended legacy, if you will, to this conflict. And it's important to say that both photographers have since returned to Iraq and remained engaged with the evolving story of that country since the war took place.
We're coming up on the 10th anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Is this an exhibit that you would say is anti-war?
Not at all. I think there's a very profound few words made by one of the artists in their statement, Thorne, who makes the remark that he's never felt more proud or patriotic when making these pictures. They're both American citizens, these photographers, and I think they were both moved to try to tell the story from a humanitarian perspective. There's not a political agenda at work here. It's really about trying to show the consequences and impact of war. And remember that through time, artists, photographers of all stripes have recorded war and conflict. It's been a subject for photographers and artists of great stature through the centuries, and so they fit into that long line of artists wanting to make a statement about conflict.
And these are many of them unvarnished pictures. There are some, pictures of normal life, men playing dominoes, that kind of thing. But it is unvarnished. And I'm wondering, what truth about war do you think these photographs tell?
I think what's important about the work made by these two artists is that it tries to convey the multi-layered nature of war. It's important to say also that both of them were in Iraq before Saddam fell, before the ouster of Saddam. So they were able to capture through the lenses of their cameras the calm before the storm. And so I think the work is important because it gives an implication of the fact that the story isn't simple. There are different facets to it, and one of the jobs of a photojournalist is to draw that out.
And lastly, what do you hope people take away when they leave this exhibit?
I hope they'll be moved and inspired by what they see. I think photojournalism is the kind of work that bears witness to the most important stories of our day, and this conflict that is represented in the exhibition has been part of our life now for a decade, and so I hope that people learn something and that they're moved and inspired.
The exhibit is called Eye Level in Iraq. It's at the De Young Museum. You can also take in the girl with a pearl earring while you're there. Julian Cox, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.